on managing your team's files effectively in Google Drive, offered by UCD IT Services. In today's session, we'll talk a little about the Digital Office initiative and what it involves. We'll discuss some best practices about file storage and sharing in UCD. We'll take a closer look at Google Drive and in particular using shared drives to best manage your team files with a suggested structure for a typical team or unit. We'll discuss transferring ownership of files on Google Drive, for example, if you change teams or if you leave UCD, and we'll share some further resources that you can refer to. So firstly, to talk about the Digital Office, this is an initiative from UCD IT Services, providing a toolkit of resources to help you complete common tasks in your online and hybrid office world. So the resources are organised around 3 themes. It's time management and calendaring, collaborating and communication, and file storage and sharing. So today's webinar is on the theme of file storage and sharing. And you can find lots of resources about the Digital Office on our website, ucd.ie/digitaloffice, or you can join our community space on Google Chat, and the link is below. So to get into our topic for today, talking about best practices for file storage and sharing in UCD. And we'll look a little at the UCD file storage and sharing guide that's available on the IT Services website. And to summarise, Google Drive is the storage solution that we recommend for all types of information. So this includes personal data and confidential university information. And for example, all of the university HR data is securely stored on Google Drive. Having said that, each individual is responsible for sharing and storing all files securely, and we'll talk a little bit about the sharing settings in Google Drive. There are some systems that are specifically designed for storing personal data, for example, Banner, InfoHub, and PeopleXD. Some systems we don't recommend for storing university information are other systems like OneDrive or Dropbox. In particular, we don't recommend at all that any personal or university information is stored on personal devices or on anything like USB keys. So the recommendation is to use Google Drive and to share appropriately. You can find some other resources about GDPR and data protection from the Office of the DPO at UCD, and the website is ucd.ie/GDPR. As I mentioned, there's a full file storage and sharing guide which is available on the UCD IT Services website. The link is below, and this goes through the recommendations for Google Drive and Novell Drive, which is still used in some places, talks about storage limits, benefits, and what the recommendations are for sharing and storing files. So this is a very useful document that we recommend everybody has a read through and saves. So then, as I said, we're going to go in and talk a little bit more about Google Drive. So Google Drive is our supported solution here at UCD. Google Drive is part of the Google Workspace suite, and it allows us to store and save files in a virtual drive. It gives us a good visibility and control over access. It also means that there's less duplication, so there's one file and various types of access to it, and we would recommend that you would send a link to a file and not an attachment. So this avoids various versions of files being sent around the place. And here, as in various other places, we'll link off to knowledge base articles that advise you how you can share access to files and folders indeed on Google Drive. And I suppose the last point here is that you can share individual files, or you can share folders, or you can share entire drives, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can do that. So talking first of all about the structure of Google Drive, and what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go to Google Drive here in UCD. So first of all, talking about how to access Google Drive, it's available either directly from UCD Connect. Click UCD Connect and you can find Google Drive for Staff, or you can go to your email or any of your Google Workspace applications, and there's a little waffle icon up here on the top right. So if you click the waffle icon, you'll also find the Drive icon, and you can access it from here. So this brings us to our Google Drive here at UCD, and we'll talk a little bit about how this is organized. There's a left navigation menu here, which gives various options for how files are stored. Here in the main screen gives a list of files that I have recently accessed with the owner and the location, and you can choose to view these. You can see here either as a list, or you can choose to view them as icons. There's also a search bar at the top, and this is one of the most powerful features of all Google products, is the search. So you can search for individual files, and you can also use the advanced search up here on the top right. So you can use this to filter down, so you can look for particular file types, like for example, I don't know, a PDF, a presentation, by an owner, if there are particular words, the name, a location, the date. You can see that there's all sorts of fields that you can find to filter down and to find the files that you're looking for. So that's our list of files. There's a settings field over here in the top right as well, where you can go in and check some of your file settings. So when you navigate to Google Drive first, you will see the home icon, which is where everybody comes by default. The next icon down in the left navigation bar is the activity. So the activity gives you recent activity that you might need to take some action on. So here, for example, I have an example of a file that might need my approval. If I had any files that were shared with me that would require comment or some action to be done on it, these would appear here in this list. And similarly, as well as appearing in the list, you will get an email reminder about any of these files needing activity or an action of some sort done to them. The third option here is workspaces, and workspaces is a nice feature where you can create, and it's an individual workspace, an individual folder if you like, that you can create here for yourself. So I've created a demo and a couple of test workspaces here, and these are ones you create just for yourself. So I'll call it sample workspace for Drive training. I'll create it. And then I can add files to it here. So for example, I might add in this slide deck, and I'll add it in. The nice thing about this is that you can add in files that belong to anybody else, that are from any shared drive, and you can add them into just your own little personal folder here that's available just to you. Something to notice is that there is a 25 file limit, but it's a nice way just to organize, I suppose, content that you might need for a particular project, or for some particular purpose. That's a mixture of files that are owned by you, shared by other people, and in different locations, so you can access them quite easily. So those are the three top icons here. Then I suppose going into more of what we're going to be talking about today, you'll see an icon here for My Drive, and you'll see with the little left arrow here that you can drop this down, that there are various other subfolders beneath it. And there are shared drives, and again there are various drives here. Underneath it then you'll see shared with me, recent, and starred. So something that we often talk about is what's the difference between all of these. So My Drive in essence is your personal drive. So this is a place that any files that are created by you will live here by default. And you can set up a whole set of subfolders here, as you can see. The folders here that we've set up are drafts, EIG training files, and personal files, and they're available here in the main view as well. So I guess this is a good place as well to talk about the drive structure. So the top level, I suppose the top organizational level, is a drive. So for example here, My Drive. The next level down is a folder. And then the layer underneath that again is the files, which are within each particular folder. And you can get to each of these again by going back, or by using the breadcrumbs on top. Okay. So this is going back to my drive. So this is my own personal drive here at my UCD account, and anything that I create here, if I create new here, for example, at the top, I can create a new folder, a new Google Doc sheet, slide or form, or I can upload file or folder from my desktop as well into this, and by default they'll go into my drive. I can select whether or not to save them into a particular folder. So that's my drive. Then the next thing is shared drives. And shared drives are what we would use as a team or a unit or a project. And it's essentially a shared top level folder that you can share with numerous different people. And the nice thing about shared drives is that you can have multiple owners for it as well, or a group owner. And this means, so for example, anything, as we said, that's in my drive is personal to you. If you are to leave UCD, your account is deleted, those files are gone. The files that are in the shared drives belong to all of the people that are the owners of that shared drive, so they stay current even if the person leaves. And you can see here we have some sample shared drives here. So I have the School of IT Services shared drive, I have the School of IT Services HR shared drive, and I have a test shared drive. And it's very easy to create a shared drive. You can create one up here, as you say, by creating it just by adding a new one here. And everybody, all staff have rights to create a new shared drive. And shared drives really are the way that we in IT services would recommend that you share your content, that you share your team, your unit, store and share your team and unit files. So the nice thing, as I said, about the shared drives is that you can have a number of members. You can also, if you have a Google group, you can, for example, for your team, you can share the shared drive with that particular group or with a number of people. So I'll go into our School of IT Services shared drive and look a little bit more into the settings and into the how it's organized here. So first of all, there's a little drop down arrow here which I can check when I'll go into the shared drive settings. Okay. So there are various things that you can do as an owner of a shared drive to configure the settings. So the first thing you can do is to, you can manage the access. So if you have, for example, you're working on a research project with people from other institutions, you can allow people outside of UCD to access files, or you can switch off that option. And then nobody outside of UCD can access the files. And this, really depends on the purpose for which you're using the files. And for example, you would also need to check this box if you wanted to share school content with students. The UCD Connect is a separate tenancy to ucd.ie. You can also, choose to share, to lock down the sharing settings. So if you have content that's particularly confidential, you can, uncheck the option. So any people who aren't shared drive members can't access the files. So that means that they can't be shared, or they can't even be viewed outside the members of the shared drive. And then underneath that, again, you can change the permissions. So you can allow content managers, and content managers is one of the roles that we'll look at here, to share folders, and you can allow viewers and commenters to download, print and copy files. Or if you choose to have this unchecked, that means people can just view them, but they can't download, print and copy. So as I said, Google Drive is GDPR compliant. It's what we recommend people use to store and to share files. But you can, as you see here, you can configure the access depending on the purpose of the information that you have. So you can make it as locked down or as available as you wish. Okay. So that's the shared drive settings. So I'm going to click the drop down menu again, and I'm going to manage the members. So this is something that's important, as I said. So we do recommend that you have a minimum of 2 managers of the shared drive. So that's meaning that you have at least 2 people who have the top level permissions to this shared drive, to the top level folder. And then underneath that, you can have, you have to have at least 1 manager. We recommend 2. And then, as you'll see, there's various different access levels within that folder again. So the content manager has access to add, edit, move, delete and share content, but they don't have access to update the people and the settings. Underneath that, you have a contributor who can add and edit files but can't, delete and share content. And then you have a commenter who can add comments, and a viewer who can only view the documents. So again, you have a very nice way of sharing the content with people as appropriate. So you can share an entire shared drive with an individual as a viewer or as a commenter, and you can also share more granularly. So for example, here you can see with the little person icon here, you can see that means that this particular folder is shared with some people that are outside of the shared drive. And I'll share a little video afterwards in the link below. It's from a company called Damson Cloud, and I think it really explains the granular permissions very well. Okay. So overall, I suppose you can share the shared drive at various different access levels, and again, we recommend you have a couple of managers on the shared drive. So here we have split this into what we think would be typical folders that a school might have. So we have a folder for academic materials, a folder for administrative, a folder for projects, a folder for staff training, and a test folder that we've set up. And it's very easy to create. You just want to go up here and create a new folder. And I'll call this example shared drive folder. And here this is created automatically here within my shared drive, and automatically everybody who has the appropriate access within this shared drive can see this folder and can see the content that's within it. So it's a nice way of organizing your content, and you can see straight away up here that there's one group and 3 people who have access to the file. I'm going to go up to the top level again. As you can see, we have a number of shared drives, and there is no restriction on the number of shared drives that anybody can create. The storage limit is slightly smaller for shared drives compared to your own personal drive. So for that reason, and also for I suppose ease of sharing, we would recommend that we get questions sometimes about I have one set of materials that I want to share with everybody in my school, but then I have one set that's restricted, and what happens then if I grant people access to the shared drive? So in that case, if somebody is granted access to the entire shared drive, then that means that they have access to everything within that drive. So you can share out an individual folder and an individual file with people who are outside of that shared drive. But if somebody has access to an entire shared drive, then you can't really lock down that content. They would then have access to a subfolder within it. So in that case, what we would recommend is maybe you set up another shared drive. So here, for example, I've set up a sample HR shared drive, and this might be maybe you have performance reviews and P4G actions, various policy documents that you don't necessarily want everybody in the school to have access to. In this case, you can see that I have restricted this to 2 people. So myself and Aidan are the only people who have access to the HR information. And again, you can set up your folders here. If there was a fun folder, that we wanted people to have access to, we could share that out with, I'll share it with myself. And I'll share it with myself, and you can see here that there are various access levels. So I want myself just to be a contributor to this. I can add a message if I want. Only members can access items in this shared drive. So there you go, and this just goes to show an example of when something is restricted, that actually you can't share this out any further. So I would need to go in, if I wanted to do that, I would need to go in and I would need to change the settings. So again, that's a good way, I guess, to restrict down access and make it so that only the managers and only the members can access materials. So that's our shared drives. And the limit for each shared drive is 200 gigabytes. Just to say that this is a sample structure that we suggest. you can share files. Something I should also have said, that you can also check the details and you can check the activity as well that has happened within any particular files. So here I've got my academic, for example, in my School of IT Services. If I look into my academic folder, then I've got it split down at program level, so sample program A and sample program B, and I can drop files in here, or I can create new files at any time. Something else that you can do, which is quite a useful thing, is to create a shortcut to another folder. So for example here, my projects drive, my projects folder here, I want to add a shortcut to this so that I can access it from another drive if I have the appropriate access. So to do that, I will go into my I'll go into my projects here, I'll right click on it, then I will select organize and add shortcut. And then I can add a shortcut to that projects folder to another location. So meaning that I can just access it with one click. So there are a set of suggested locations here. There are my starred locations, or I can look to all locations as well. So I might look here at my shared drives. I don't necessarily just want to add it to my shared drive, though. I want to kind of choose where exactly it goes. So to do that, I'll click the little the arrow here on the right. And then I want to add it to my HR shared drive, and here I will just I want to add it at that level, so I'll add the shortcut into my folder. This person can't access the folder because of its sharing permissions, so I'll add the shortcut anyway. Okay. And I'll go to my School of IT Services, and now you can see that my shortcut is here to my projects folder. So in this case, as I said, this is only, so there's two people in the School of IT Services. There's myself, which is EAG training in this case, and Aidan. So it's only me that will have access to this projects folder. You can see that it's a shortcut, but what I can do is, if I want to as well, is I can rename it. I can rename it here, so it's only. So that indicates who can access it. It doesn't make a difference to the original folder name, but again, it's a handy one. And this is, again, if it's in the scenario that you have certain materials in another drive that only some people will have access to, and you can have it in another shared drive. So that just makes the sharing, it makes the permissions, it just makes it all clearer rather than having really granular sharing. But you can add in a shortcut into the regular school shared drive so that people can very easily access it. You can also move files, move individual folders. So this is adding a shortcut. For example, here I have my fun folder. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, rather than sharing it, actually it might make more sense. This is a fun folder, this is for everybody to access. So what I might want to do with this one is I might want to move it rather than create a shortcut. So what I'm going to do again is right click on my fun folder, click organize and move. And it's suggested here to put it into the School of IT Services shared drive, and I can either move that directly, or what I'm going to do is click my little arrow here and see where do I want to add it into. So this, I have academic, administrative, projects on the shared drive, and so I'm going to put this into, actually I'm going to add this into the top level because this is fun stuff. And you'll see you get a warning message here. So members of the HR shared drive will lose access, and members of the School of School of IT Services shared drive will gain access. So I'm going to go ahead and move that. So you'll see now it's gone completely from the HR shared drive. So it's different to the projects one, which you can see here with the little arrow. We can indicate that's just a shortcut and it's still housed in the initial location. Whereas in this case, I've moved my fun folder completely over to the School of IT Services. So you can do that with an individual folder, you can do it with an individual file, and the link, if you share the document with other people, the link remains the same, so you don't have to make any changes to that. You can also go in and you can see the if you click the little information icon here, you can see on the right pane here basically details of who has access to any particular folder, you know, when it was modified and opened, and you can see the most recent activity. For example, here you can see that I have moved this fun folder to the School of IT Services on the 22nd of April at 4:32, and you can go back and you can see the history. So this is handy, you know, if, I don't know, somebody moves a document by accident, or, you know, just that you have that file history there. So that's, I think, talking about my drive and shared drives. And then just looking down very quickly, I think people get a little bit confused about the difference between shared drives and shared with me. So shared drives are, as we described, they're this shared top level folder that anybody can create, and then you can share them with a specific group of people, and those files that live then within that particular shared drive, they belong to the group, they belong to the shared drive. So what's shared with me is it's a bit different. So that is a set of files that somebody has shared with you. So somebody has gone into a document and shared it with you specifically. So if it's shared with you, it's still owned by somebody else. So meaning if they move it, if they do something different with it, it can still disappear. So it's a different thing to a shared drive. So it's just a list of files essentially that's been shared with you today, earlier this month, and earlier this year. There's also recent, which is kind of as it says on the tin, the most recent activity files that I've worked out today and earlier this month. And then last but not least, a very handy function here is starred. So any folder, any particular file or folder, you have the option to put a little star or an unstar with it. So you can do that by, there's 3 dots at the side of any file or folder. And I can remove that from starred. So again, it's that organize menu. So I can star it. In this case, I've already starred it, so I can remove it from starred if I want to. And this again is specific to you. This, you know, doesn't affect anybody else's view of the drive. And again, it's a useful feature if you want to find things kind of quickly. So this has always been here. I think the workspaces is a new feature, which is, I suppose, a more advanced version, as I said. So starred is individual files. It's just a list of stuff that you might want to come back to, whether they're yours or somebody else's. Whereas workspaces is that little, you know, organization of files that you might want to, up to 25 files that you might want to gather together and look at a later stage. Okay. So that's, I think, shared drives, and I will flick through these slides. They'll be available afterwards underneath for context. You know, just going through all of the different options that we've discussed with the My Drive and Shared Drive, starred, the different access types, and how to manage members, and yeah, the demo of what we did. So the next thing we're going to talk about is leaving and transferring file ownership at UCD. So this is a very text heavy slide. I'm going to describe how you can do this. As I say, we do recommend that if you're using shared drives, you don't need to transfer ownership. The files remain within the shared drive, and even if you leave, you know, they don't get automatically deleted. Whereas if you have a set of files and you've shared them with your team, you've made everybody the editor, you are still the owner if they're in your personal drive. So if you leave UCD, and it often happens, then those files will be deleted. So before you leave UCD, our recommendation would be to, you know, move your files, you know, just as we saw there, move them into a shared drive, or you can transfer ownership of your files. So to transfer ownership, there are a few steps involved. So you'll need to use the advanced search that we looked at to identify files. So you need to know that if you're transferring ownership of files, that needs to be done at the file level and not at the folder level. So yeah, if you change the owner of a folder, it doesn't automatically change the owner of each file. So remember that. You can select multiple files from your search results by clicking and dragging your cursor over them. Another caveat is that if there are shortcuts, you'll need to unselect those as well before transferring ownership of multiple files, and we can't exclude the shortcuts from the search results at this time. And just to note that we should only transfer ownership of files to other UCD accounts. So this is specifically about transferring files to hand over to a colleague before you leave. If you want to transfer your personal data to your Google Workspace account, then use Google Takeout, and you must ensure that any confidential or restricted data is not included when you're transferring data out of your university account. And one last but important note is that to transfer ownership of a file to somebody else at UCD, it must already be shared with them. So before you go ahead and do your search and find the individual files that you need to make sure that that file is first shared with the person who will be the new owner. So a few things to remember there. There is, again, as always, a knowledge-based article that goes through all of these steps and shows you how to do it step by step and with some screenshots. As we say down here, we do recommend that you save the work in a shared drive, and then you can avoid all of this transferring ownership. But this does come up, particularly at the start of the year if people move on from different contracts. So do remember to do this before you leave UCD, because afterwards your account is deleted and we can't always get the data back once the account is deleted. So again, we'll share the link afterwards. That's it for today. I think going back over what we talked about, I suppose the main takeaways is that we recommend that everybody reads the UCD file storage and sharing guide. We also recommend that you consult the university's IT security and GDPR guidance on the best practices around saving and sharing confidential information. There's lots of information available on both websites. We do recommend that you save your work in a folder on your school or unit's shared drive in Google Drive rather than in your own drive. If you're sharing files, for example, if you want to get feedback, if you're sharing a document or a presentation with somebody, share a link in Google Drive rather than sending a file as an attachment. And if you like having the folder structure on your desktop, you can continue to use that, and there is a product called Google Drive for Desktop that works as a virtual G drive. And again, as always, we have a link to a knowledge-based article with instructions for how you can download Google Drive for Desktop and how you can use it from your machine. And something to note as well is that using Google Drive for Desktop or for using Google Drive, you can use a Google Drive to store things like PDFs, images, Office files. It's not only for Google Docs. It is our recommended storage solution for all. So I'll go back to what we looked at today. We looked at the Google Drive layout. So we'll go back here to the home. We looked at looking at files, at folders. We discussed that you can view by files or by the icons. That you can use the advanced search, and as I said, this might be particularly relevant if you are trying to identify files that you want to transfer ownership of. The left navigation menu, we looked at home, we looked at activity, which is recent things you need to take action of, and workspaces, which are individual areas that you have saved for yourselves. We talked about My Drive, which is your own personal set of files on the G drive. We also talked about shared drives, which are our recommended storage and sharing solution for schools and units. As we said, you don't just have to have one shared drive, you can have multiple shared drives. You could have one for a particular project, one for your team or unit, one for a particular initiative, and you can share and you can restrict sharing on the shared drives with different audiences. You also have the other options here, which are shared with me, files that have been shared with you by somebody else. You have the most recent files that you have worked on, and you have starred files, which you can go through and you can star or you can unstar files by going to the organize menu and you add to start or remove from start. So with that, there are a set of resources here that we will make available in the comments, and we hope that you have found this session helpful.